Hi, this is Bruce Carton from Securities Docket. Between the Securities Docket website, 4 annual securities enforcement forum events throughout the country, and our daily update newsletter, Securities Docket is the hub of securities enforcement. But sometimes there are people and stories in this area that are so interesting that we want to dig even deeper. Welcome to the Enforcement Overtime Podcast with me, Bruce Carton, as your host. Thanks for listening. Braeden Anderson, great to have you with the podcast today. Welcome.
Thanks, Bruce. Happy to be here.
So I have gotten to know Braeden a little bit over the last, 6-12 months. I wanted to have him on this podcast because he's just an interesting guy overall who is doing a lot of really interesting things in the SEC enforcement space. Kind of like a next gen, I feel like, type of lawyer that I've learned a lot from, and I feel like could be an interesting person for the people who listen to this podcast to listen to. So, Braeden, one of the things I want to talk to you about, there's several things I want to talk to you about. So one is, as of today, you have about 107,000 YouTube followers for a channel that basically is talking about securities enforcement, which I did not know there were that many people who would even tune in for something like that. There's a lot of other things. I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about your newsletter. I want to talk about your use of social media. But before we do that, I mean, you actually have a really interesting background. And so at one point, I don't know if you thought you were going to get to the NBA to be a basketball player. You're like 6'9", right? How tall are you?
Yeah, 6'8" 3/4.
6'8" 3/4. I mean, no joke. Recruited to Kansas basketball. Tell me about your path to me even getting to law school.
Yeah, I think the law was always something that really interested me. I always wanted to become a lawyer at some point when the basketball stops bouncing, as they say. Basketball was really a vehicle for me to make a better life for myself, go to college, get an education. Based on how I grew up, those were not obvious opportunities that were going to be available to me. Even law school in the United States itself, very, very expensive. Need to be a U.S. citizen or a green card holder to qualify for student loans. Canada treats all of this a little bit differently, right? And so basketball, funny enough, became the vehicle that allowed me to get to law school. And what sped up that process was almost career-ending, almost life-ending car accident, actually, where I broke my neck in an accident caused by a drunk driver, which unfortunately led to some loss of life. And that is kind of what expedited my kind of fast-track view of, hey, tomorrow's not promised. It's not promised that you're going to make it to the NBA. These kinds of accidents, things can happen that are beyond your control. And that kind of forced me to focus more on law school and my career as an attorney being a bigger priority.
You started there. You started at Kansas, right?
Started at Kansas.
Basketball recruit at Kansas. What year is this?
This is 2011.
2011.
Transferring to Fresno State. The associate head coach at Texas moved over, got the job. He was recruiting me prior. Also, Michael Schwartz, who was at Miami, was recruiting me. So they both met up at Fresno. And there was an opportunity for me to kind of go one and done. I wasn't going to play a lot at Kansas that year because they had Thomas Robinson, and I wasn't going to play over Thomas Robinson, right? He's still in the NBA today, right? And so my opportunity at Fresno was to go be a big fish in a small pond. Paul George had just left, so I was going to get to come kind of replace Paul George and be the guy. And all of this was on pace. The summer before it would have been my first full season was, I was with the Canadian Olympic team, was training with Steve Nash. That was only a couple months before the accident. And then when that happened, it changed things a lot. I ended up making a full recovery after spending 30 to 45 days in the hospital. And when I did that, I just started loading up on credits. I started maxing out the amount that you could take. And then I eventually started sending letters to the president of the university asking him so that I could take even more. Because I had this crazy idea that I was going to play basketball while in law school full time. It had never been done. And the only way that it could happen is if the president of Fresno State would allow me to take 36 credits in the fall of 2014 and then take 22 credits in the spring of 2015.
36 credits in one semester?
Correct. And this happened. Yes. And That was the only way that it was going to work, because I decided that I was going to graduate multiple years early at the last second, right?
Yeah.
Right after the accident, I had this crazy idea. I didn't have a ton of time, right? So I needed to crunch in a couple years into essentially a year and a half when I had made that decision. And, luckily there was one law school in the country that would allow me to do it, Seton Hall. And so that's how I ended up there as a basketball player, but I actually wasn't a student at the undergrad. I was at Seton Hall Law School at the time. So I got my couple of years of law school paid for, and that's the only reason why I was able to have the good fortune of sharing a profession with you.
So have there been any others who followed in your footsteps and been law student / basketball players?
It's so funny. 100% there has, right? Because they got picked up by the media. That was one of my arguments for allowing me to do it. Because you can imagine being a kid calling up the dean of a law school and then calling up the athletic director and being like, hey, I'm Braeden. I want to be a lawyer. I'm a basketball player. Can I go to law school while playing? And they're like, what? I don't know. Who are you? I've never even met the basketball coach, right? Like, these are people who never communicate. And so that's why this has never been done. But since at Seton Hall, the interim athletic director at the time is a guy by the name of Pat Hobbs. He was actually the dean of the law school as well. And so that's the only reason why they let me do it. Right? It's because he was like, yeah, that would be cool.
Who since you has done it?
There's a bunch of names. But there's probably 6 or 7 folks who have reached out. I don't want to mention one of them and not all of them, but you can look it up. There's a lot of people. I probably get once or twice a year a message on LinkedIn from someone who wants to do it. The funny thing is, I'm not sure everyone who has been successful, because I've gotten so much outreach. I know that at least, because I've seen the headlines, at least 3 to 5, right, have successfully done it and made headlines. But it's a funny thing that I get asked questions about a lot. How did you do this? What should I do? How should I go about this? And not all basketball. There's a woman who played softball who was able to do it at George Mason. Someone at the University of Alabama. So really cool.
So you graduate. You graduate Seton Hall. You just to shortcut this a bit. You went to Sidley out of law school, correct? And worked in the SEC enforcement area. You now run your own firm called Anderson PC. There was one other interesting thing along the way. Didn't you have some kind of private equity firm that you run as well, right?
Yeah, so essentially, company's called Obsequian Capital, and the entity holds interest in a variety of different hospitality concepts. It started with Black Turtle Coffee, a coffee shop that me and my wife started down the shore during COVID to pass the time, right? This didn't start as something that we were going to turn into an enterprise or turn into a greater vision. It started just as a passion. We loved coffee. We had both moved down the shore to the Margate, Ventnor area from New York City, and we loved it. Being near the ocean, we're on the boats, we're at the beach. It's COVID times, right? We have no idea how long it's going to last, but it kind of seemed to last forever. And the only thing we really, really missed was the hospitality of New York. The hospitality scene, the food, beverage, coffee scene is bar none, obviously. And we started fantasizing about what it really would take to start a coffee shop. Answer that question, how hard could it be, right? It was kind of a flip it. How hard could it be? The answer is it's very hard. But if you treat it the way a lawyer's mind kind of treats problems and problem solving, it's hard to do it halfway. So by the time that we had actually answered that question fully, we kind of had all the ammo that we needed to actually do it. And so we were like, you know what? I think we're almost too far into this thing not to do it. It's really hard, but I think we answered all of the questions. That's what was really difficult. So we opened our first one in Brigantine. We've ended up expanding to 3 different coffee shops, and we also have a coffee roastery in Philly. We're looking forward to continuing to grow that business. It's not without its challenges. Hospitality is very challenging. Not all of our locations have succeeded. We had a couple other concepts as well. Some of them are no longer with us. It seems like a relative died, right? It almost feels like that too, right? When you start a little baby startup business, but it's, that business, hospitality, it's not for the faint of heart. You can definitely make money in it. But I think what I cherished the most from that experience was just understanding the business side of the economy, just understanding what it's like to be an operator. I feel like I understand my clients so much better. I represent a ton of startups, mid-sized, big companies, and I just understand the shoes that they're in and the seat that they sit in way better, having run my own payroll and had an enterprise with 100 plus people who report up to you, and what the pressures are of being the guy who ultimately has their name on the line. It's I think you have a new type of respect for owner operators and people who sign their name on the check.
As I mentioned, we've gotten to know each other a bit over the last 6 months through events and different things. And you now actually are a contributor at Securities Docket. You have been doing the weekly update video. If you read the newsletter, you'll see Braeden there on Fridays. And you're also on the advisory board of Securities Docket now, so thank you for that. But the reason I think, I was interested in you doing those videos was seeing the kind of videos that you were doing on your own channel. And they're different. There's been plenty of lawyer videos, even in the SEC enforcement space through the last 5-10 years. They're pretty dry. They're pretty, highly buttoned up and very professional. You've chosen kind of a different approach to video, and you can't really argue with the results. I mean, you have 107,000 YouTube subscribers, and I don't think you've had the YouTube channel for very long. So what kind of use are you making a video? What's your strategy? The way I see it, it almost looks like a TikTok-y type of approach where, you're trying to capture people's attention. They're short, there's words, there's graphics, but they seem to be catching on. I'm just kind of wondering how you chose to approach this and what you make of the success you're having and what can you do with it?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think we all, and when I say we all, I mean most lawyers, we're trying to do the best that we can, especially those who are heavily engaged in business development, trying to win clients, trying to build our personal brands, trying to build the brands of our firms, whether it's trying to shine a light on the larger group that you're a part of and that you're a team member of, or whether you own your own shop, right? Like I do. And it's no question that video is really effective. And most people want to do video. They want to do it. They see the video being put out and they're like, I should do that. I should do that. I should do that. And we don't do it, right? We don't do it. And I think for me, for years, I've wanted to do some kind of video, didn't do it because it's a lot of effort. It seems kind of scary. It seems very risky. You don't want to embarrass yourself, right? Like it's hard to put yourself out there and just start making videos. But for me, funny enough, it was actually a quote from Mr. Beast, the famed YouTuber, really the most successful, not just YouTube creator. He wins that by a landslide, but I think he's one of the most impressive and most successful content creators of our time. If not of all time, certainly he's the most prolific. He had this to say. He said, of all the things I've learned, right? And he wrote this in an internal memo that got leaked. It was kind of a onboarding. Read this. This is the Bible of Mr. Beast. This is like everything you need to know. And it's quite long. I can't remember how many pages it is. It's 50 or more. The Mr. Beast Manifesto, if anybody wants to look it up. The most important takeaway that I took away from it was that he emphasized how important it was to make every video you make, your next video, the best that you can, the next one, and just keep on improving. But that you can't stop the train. You have to make content. Number one, you need to make videos, period. You need to put them out. You need to come up with your schedule and you're putting out that video. You cannot let perfection be the enemy of good. and the enemy of done. You have to focus on, if there's something, when you watch that back, you're going to have a million edits for yourself. You're going to be like, oh, wow, I kind of look silly there. And the way I said that, that's a little much and a little too much hand movement. There's so many things that when I watch my early videos or even a video from last month that I'm like, oh, I really got to get better on that. I think what was freeing for me was just making the decision that I'm going to make a video, I'm going to put it out, and the next one, if I have edits, I'm going to focus on making those edits the next time and not let that hinder my progress.
Yeah.
Right? Because at the end of the day, our own internal, no one's going to be a harsher critic than the person looking in the mirror.
What are your goals though with this channel that is growing so quickly and has so many subscribers? Like, what can you do with it that's useful that people can take away from that?
Yeah, I think part of what you try to do is go more broad first and then try to carry out the niches. Like, some of my videos are more broad appeal. They're evergreen topics. They're kind of general. They may even be considered rudimentary for some of the more sophisticated members of our bar. However, others, I get a little bit more nuance and a little bit more detailed, and it's a little bit more complex, the issues that we break down. And I think having that mix is really important, and understanding that not every video is going to be for everyone, and just letting the algorithm do its thing. The algorithm is code for the audience, right? That's another thing that you'll hear diving into this practice of making videos, is the algorithm is the audience, and there isn't a huge audience for securities enforcement stuff. There isn't. However, I think what my page, what my channel, what my presence has shown is that even if the videos that you're making are not for everyone, there are going to be people who, even though they don't work at an investment bank or they're not in-house at a broker-dealer, they still find your content interesting. You're still becoming top of mind for them. If they should meet anyone or have a conversation with somebody about law or securities or startups or corporate governance or internal investigations or any of the things I talk about, they're sure to think of me. And so referrals are massive with this. When you combine that with the SEO that you get from writing articles early, often, and frequently, it creates a little bit of a flywheel that just draws more attention to you, your firm, your website, catch more flies.
So, but do a comparison for me. So, like, let's say you take the typical big firm. I'm just going to say, dry professional analysis of some issue. Maybe it gets 350 hits,
right?
But maybe there are 350, I don't know, the people you just described, people in the penthouse office, whatever, versus a video that gets 250,000 hits, but it's scattered from, just the 16-year-old who saw it because the algorithm brought it up to whoever. Like, what's the business case for yours versus the other kind?
I mean, to me, that's a silly question because no one's watching the other video. Like, if you got
some people are, like some of the right people maybe are.
Well, I think that you got to think first about what kind of videos these are. But when I say not, it's like it's not even close, right? In terms of the amount of people, it's really not close. But I think you got to look at first what kind of video this is. On my YouTube and on my platforms, I've been focusing on shorts, like you said, so 2 minutes or less usually. Yeah. So I've some that go a little bit longer, like the ones I do with you. We go a little bit longer because YouTube changed the rules. You can go up to 3 minutes now, so we do those, right? But number one, that's where the attention of people under 40, call it, right? Certainly under 30. That's where everybody is. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. I mean, in those 31 views or that 91 views that we might be seeing on really dry stuff, you're not getting the young people on that stuff. Number one. Number two, the horizontal videos, right? I would say a different angle, also important, right? I'm not going to poo-poo at all the very tight, kind of more formal, little bit more dry content that you see in a horizontal YouTube video that might be a CLE. It's supposed to be a way more informative deep dive on a subject. I'm not going to teach you some very complex, wide-ranging, nuanced, substantive area of law in 2 minutes or in 3 minutes. But what I am going to do is I'm going to pop up on your feed. You're going to see me. You're going to see my face. You're going to know my name. And you're going to know that I have 3 or 4 really important, tight things to say about an important topic. And if you're interested, maybe you'll come back. But I think the CLE type, dry type, longer form content is really important too. I just think that it's a little bit harder to get right. And I think most people don't get it right. That's why when we talk about it, it's like, yeah, it is dry and it's not getting the views. And I would say the reason for that is that people's attention is so hard to get these days that in order for someone to sit there and watch an hour-long video, it has to have some kind of production value. You're competing with Mr. Beast. You're competing with people who are doing a really good job on video editing.
Yeah.
And most law firms, I shouldn't even say most, I haven't seen a law firm put the kind of production value that they would need to into their long form video in order to get views, which is for me my next phase. That's going to be my next kind of evolution is the evolution into horizontal as well as the short.
You now made 7,500 videos or however many are on your channel now. What have you learned about the importance of capturing people's attention immediately and how to do that?
Yeah, I would say I'm still experimenting with that. My most successful video, there was something on fire in the first 5 seconds.
That one.
Right? That, I mean, probably no secret why that one did the very, very best. But
I think you had told me before that, if you come out of the gate slow, you'll get the analytics of that video and like all the people and it just crashes and no one's around anymore. They don't even stick around for the whole 50 seconds.
The first 5 seconds is in the industry the most important. And it might be that there's a lot of movement, that you're really engaging. It might be that the background is a little bit more exciting. There's a prop, there's something you're holding, there's something you're doing in the video. Not in all of my videos do I have a sexy, really exciting first 5 seconds in terms of a prop or something extreme, but I do try to make sure that the words that come out of my mouth in the first 5 seconds really quickly captivate and let the listener, the viewer, know what we're talking about and why they should care. What
is your goal now? I mean, you got 107,000 in, I don't know, 6 months. How long have you been doing it?
We started it in December, mid-December. We started the YouTube.
Okay, so 4 months.
Yeah.
What's your goal?
My goal is by the end of the summer to reach 1 million.
And what can you do then with the YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers who at least have some interest in securities law? What do you think you can do with it then?
I think obviously most people will be thinking about monetization. At 1 million subscribers, I will be able to monetize on YouTube. So I will be making revenue from YouTube, certainly, from the views and hits that come to the videos. Outside of that, I think it comes down to all of the fundamental reasons why we do business development as lawyers in the first place. Number one, we're interested in this stuff anyway. I love this stuff. I read this stuff. I'm going to keep up to date with everything happening in securities enforcement and regulatory issues, no matter what, because this is what I do. This is my craft. And most who are watching this video feel the exact same way. And so when you think about that, it's like, what can you do with that, right? How can I leverage that effort that I'm already going to put into staying ridiculously up to date with this narrow, specific area of law? Well, the first thing is I'm going to write articles. Of course, I'm going to write articles about the big things that happen and put it out there to my clients, prospective clients, anybody on Google searching this. Here it is. I'm going to give out some free writings. On top of that, if you've already created this article, why would you not leverage that article? It's very easy to turn an article into a video script. And short articles, short client alerts convert very easily into video, especially a short. It literally, I promise you, if you're watching this and you have a client alert style writing that you've done, it just becomes, when you verbally explain the core points from that article and you just press record and then clean up the ums and the ahs and the gaps, it will be about a 2-minute video. It will. And so with that, now, okay, you've already done the work, you can leverage that, create a video. And so it becomes, I think, just the most efficient way to leverage that time that you're already spending staying up to date with everything. And as you get better at it, here's the number one thing I would tell people. The first time that you try to do this, you're not going to be that good at it. It's not going to be that good. It'll probably be okay. And it will probably take you a long time. It will suck. You'll be like, oh man, this sucks, right? This took me a long time. Here's the funny thing that people forget. You can't base how hard this is going to be or how long it's going to take off of how hard or how long it took the first time. Every single time you do it, you're going to get better and better and better. And you're going to find shortcuts and you're going to find little efficiencies and areas to cut off fat and do it faster and faster. And by the end of it, like right now, I can make a 2-minute video in about 8 minutes, right?
And you also work with a team or other people who help you on the back end, right? Help you with the editing or the producing or whatever. Is that
100%? Yeah. So you should never be doing the editing. That's a really good rule of thumb that you'll actually hear from all creators. This isn't to lawyers. This isn't like, hey, lawyers, you guys can't do editing because we don't trust you. No creators do editing. No serious creators do their own editing because it's not worth your time. You can find cheap editing in India. You can find cheap editing in Pakistan. If you want to use somebody who's domestic, that's your prerogative. You are going to pay higher than what I would term to be the market, because there's such a wealth of highly skilled editors overseas that you can, hire on Fiverr or, whatever app that you like to use to hire outside contractors internationally.
So I know you also are active on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter. Do you use those to kind of flywheel what you're doing on YouTube? Are they all kind of pulling the oar the same direction at the same time? Or are they all doing different things?
This is a really good question too. A lot of people, I think, overthink that. If I made the video and I can post it on YouTube Shorts, it's the same thing about re-leveraging. I already have the video. I'm gonna post it on Twitter. I'm gonna post it on LinkedIn. I'm gonna post it on Facebook. I'm gonna post it on Instagram. I'm gonna post it anywhere that I can, right? Because I've already done the work. It takes me less than 10 minutes to post it on all those different platforms. There are also services that you can pay to do that. When I first started, I had a service that posted for me. But again, it's the same thing, how you learn and iterate and get more efficient. I learned after a couple months that, man, I really don't need to pay somebody to do that part of it for me. I can do that, right? Now I've kind of learned how this system works. But at first, it might be overwhelming to think about doing that all yourself. And so you can find someone to do it for you. You never know which of these platforms is actually going to work. I didn't go into this thinking that YouTube I had no idea. I thought that Instagram actually was going to be the most effective. And I thought LinkedIn might be really effective. LinkedIn has turned out thus far to be the least effective. I think Instagram has also similarly not been that effective. I have gotten a client from Twitter. I've gotten a client from TikTok, and I've gotten many clients from YouTube. So far, none from LinkedIn. So who knows what that means?
Yeah. I think it's kind of funny. So we both are very interested in securities enforcement. We both spend a lot of time following what's going on. And then I do the exact opposite of what you do, right? I put out a newsletter that's, I'd say, fairly dry. That's, goes out to a relative to 107,000 small number of people who are probably lawyers or work at investment banks or in-house. And then I use a lot of LinkedIn. Then you use all the other things, right, at a much greater scale.
I was such a good team.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, Braeden, is kind of your use of AI, both as a lawyer, both as a business person, as somebody who's doing videos, as somebody who has a newsletter. That's a lot of different pieces. But for somebody like myself, like I am barely using ChatGPT. It's like I want to kind of get fluent in what's useful to lawyers and to business people. and it's something that I'm trying to spend more time on. But I was wondering if you could share how you're using AI in your practice and in your business.
Probably the most important question of the day, right? As soon as you figure out the video and content, right, thinking about how AI can help you both do the video and the content and business development, and also how it can help you in your practice, I think is really important. The first thing to consider is, what exactly am I trying to accomplish? What am I doing within my practice, whether that's business development, whether that's writing a brief, writing an email, whether that's drafting a script for a video. What exactly am I doing, writing an article? And what is the best tool to leverage in order to help me do that job? That might be an AI assisted tool. It may be a chat GPT type of tool. It may be using the AI functionality within Relativity to do a TAR assisted, AI assisted review of documents to call things down and save your client money. It may be that you're using Lexis AI to assist with research to find a great case that then is going to be reviewed by a human being lawyer for accuracy and relevancy. I think it's first deciding what the right tool is. And there's probably another 100, 200 tools that should be on the Rolodex of things that you are just aware exists and can explore when and if it makes sense for you to leverage that in your practice. I would say for me, I use a couple different tools. I mean, I use all the tools I just mentioned, Relativity assisted review from time to time. It depends on the client.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
So you can essentially, if you have a universe of 2 million documents that you collected and you're responding to an SEC subpoena, you can't review 2 million documents. Sometimes you can argue the past practice, okay? Past traditional practice would be, you go back to the SEC, say, hey, you've asked for something that turns back 2 million potentially relevant documents, right? This is way too much of a universe. It's way too burdensome. Obviously, we have to review all this. You know, what are you really interested in? Can we kind of narrow this? Oh, okay, you're really interested in this particular set of documents. All right, so you don't need all this nonsense. This is all noise. Great. So maybe you can kind of manually call things down to a reasonable universe. And so maybe you've called down through either narrowing the subpoena or narrowing your interpretation of what that request is asking for down to, let's call it 100,000 or 200,000 documents. That's still a lot of documents to review, especially if you have rates in big law like I do. It's too much for associates to review. We still have to call it down even more, or use contract attorneys, cheap reviewers, to put eyes on these documents in some way to distill them down to a more manageable number that then more senior attorneys can review, right? At least in samples, QC, key docs, etc. And what the AI assisted, kind of TAR assisted machine learning tools that platforms like Relativity have, they allow, essentially there's a machine learning aspect where they will, based on batches that have been reviewed already from human being lawyers, right, that are correct, that the most senior people review and make sure it's right. Because you need to make sure, if you're going to train an AI, if you're going to train a machine learning AI model to review documents for you, they need to have really good examples of what's right and wrong. Because if you give them improperly coded documents to learn on, obviously it all goes out the window. Your AI, you don't blame AI, right? And so from there, once you have enough sample documents coded by your in-house team, by your associates, by you, etc., you can feed that into the AI and give it test batches to spit out and see how the machine codes it, right? And then you still have to QC it. You still have to make sure that it's accurate. But if you get to a point where you're 99.6% accurate, right? That's a pretty good place to be, right? And you end up just QCing what you can, pulling in, doing a reasonably diligent job on the cleanup, on the QC on the backside to make sure you're making a full and accurate production to the government. And boom, you could have just saved your client $300,000, $250,000.
What are some of the tools, the AI tools that you use, like to run your business or to do marketing, to not to do legal research and that kind of thing, but just as a business person, things that you find effective?
I think using ChatGPT but using the business version of ChatGPT.
What does that mean? What's a business version?
So there's a free version, and there's a business version. There's paid versions that are not for business, but there is a business version of ChatGPT that if you're a lawyer and you're using ChatGPT, you should be using that version. There are more robust privacy controls in place there. One of the most important aspects is that your chats not be used. If you're sharing client confidential information in these chats from time to time, you do not want the larger model of ChatGPT and OpenAI to be using your client data, to be using your privileged communications to train their AI and make it better.
What do they charge for the business version?
Give or take, don't quote me, like $60-$70 per user. So, I have 3 or 4 users, right? Like you think about the expense being between, $200 to $500, right?
Yeah.
Depending on how many users you're putting in there. For me, I would say money well spent. But on that point, I think that's what's probably the most powerful tool that I use day in and day out. We've talked about some more legal specific tools, but OpenAI and ChatGPT are really, really powerful tools to use, right? That chat tool is very, very effective, especially as it continues to learn from your communications with it over time. It has a deeper memory is one of the features of the business version. So it continues to learn over the course of 6 months, a year, how you operate, what your style is, what kind of writing style that you prefer. And it gets better and better at the job. But I would say the biggest mistake that people make with ChatGPT, Bruce, is I'll call it the laziness factor. They think of ChatGPT and they see how powerful it is and that you can just ask it to do something and it will just try. It will try. You can give a very low effort input into ChatGPT and it will give you an amazing output, right? Because it can access the entire internet and try to put stuff together. That, though, is the most irresponsible way ever that you could use that tool. The way that I use that tool is if, let's say I want to put together an email that breaks down a legal issue that I'm pretty familiar with, but I want to put together something that's really nice and clean, right? What I might do, I probably have in a folder somewhere on my local drive, I probably have 5-6 sources that cover that area of the law perfectly. They're my favorite sources. I know they're up to date. I know they're current. I know they're amazing. I might pull those in to ChatGPT because with the pro version, you can put massive files into this thing. You can literally drop massive files into the chat box. Boom, 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 boom.
You upload a PDF and it reads it.
Nope. Absolutely. And then I'll get in the prompt. I will spend maybe 75% or half of the time I would have spent writing the email, I will spend on the prompt. So I'm not saving I think it's too greedy to think you're saving 99% of time. I think you should think about trying to save half the time. If you can save half the time, why are we being so greedy and trying to save 99? So half the time is good. Spend half the time on the prompt and you will have an outcome that's really good. It is not meaningfully discernible from whether you wrote it and spent double the time on it and whether ChatGPT assisted you with it, right? But it takes that time, right? So instead of spending 45 minutes on that email, I might spend 20 or 25 minutes on the prompt explaining in vivid detail what I want ChatGPT to do with this data, what data I'm feeding it, right? Like step by step, what the context is, the tone, and just spend the time there. And some people might say, oh, well, you spend all that time doing that, you might as well write the email. I disagree. I can saving 50% of time, right, is enough for me, right, is what I would say. And maybe, and not maybe, as ChatGPT gets better, my answer right now might be archaic. 3 years from now, a year from now, right? If Sam Altman was listening in, he'd probably be like, yeah, you wait and see what we're doing, buddy, right? But where we are today, you need to be very careful, I would say, and put a lot of time into your prompts.
Well, I'm confident that wherever we are a year from now, you will be there early and doing it well. So Braeden, thanks so much for your time today. It was really interesting to hear from you and really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce.